Okay, step number 11, we are going to be continuing to make the top. We've already done on step 10, we made our panel for the top, and now we're going to make the frame that frames around the panel. So first part, it says look at your estimating sheet for the dimensions needed for the top frame front back and top frame sides. So if you lost your estimating sheet, I've got an extra one that you can come get from me, but on here, remember, it has all the dimensions of all the boards. And I'm looking at my top frame front back and top frame sides, and I can see all my dimensions. I've already cut those to that size to save some time, but you should know how to do that. I've got my top frame sides and top frame front and back. Those there. So 2.5 inches wide, 18 inches long, 3/4 thick on those, and then these are 28 long, same other thickness and width. Next, now when you're getting these boards, please look in the short rack first, because we want to try to use up some of those shorter boards instead of getting a big, long, huge board out of the wood storage room. So try to find those, if possible, in the short rack. Okay, after you get them all cut to size, it also says make sure you get your top panel from the previous plan of procedure. I've got that one. And then it says if you plan on carving a design in your top, you want to do this before we actually start cutting these and framing them up. So if you're planning on doing a carving on your top, let me know and we can get that going. I did a carving on my front of my box there, and so I'm not going to do a carving on my top. If you want to do one, just let me know, we can do that. Okay, it says mark an X on your best face. Again, we're doing this to choose which part we want people to see. You're going to mark an X on your best face of these frames here. So I look at both my faces here. Maybe I like that face better. I'm going to put an X. Again, look at your face of each of your boards. Decide which face you think looks better and put an X. Actually, I'm going to go with that face there. And this one here, you know, they both look pretty good. Maybe I'll go with this side here. It's just choosing what part people will see, because they're going to see the top more than underneath. They still will see underneath on this, but most of the time they're going to just see the outside top. Then use router number 2 to route a groove on one edge of all your top frame front back and top frame sides. Have the X facing down. Now this gets confusing because people kind of make a mistake. They have their X up or down or whatever. They have it wrong sometimes. So really bring your paper with you as you do this, because it'll have bolded which way you're putting your X. Because some boards you have to run it face up, other boards you have to run face down, and it does matter. So kind of pay attention to that. So we're going to come over to router number 2 with my groove, and we're going to run one edge on those. Okay, on router 2, the one with the groove, it says, and now again I had it bolded there, it says have the X facing down, and you're just going to run one edge all the way across. Be sure to use push sticks. The reason why, obviously, to get your hands out of the way, but the other reason is it helps keep pressure down on this as you run them through. If you don't put that pressure down, your groove might go and then it kind of isn't straight. And we want this thing to go nice and straight. So I would recommend, use a push stick to hold it down, the other one to push it through. And we're just going to get a groove on one edge. X down on this point here. Make sure that groove is nice and straight. If it's not, rerun it, or if it's not the same depth all the way through, rerun it again, okay? So keep that X down. You go ahead and run that on each of these boards, just one edge. X down. Inspect and make sure that's nice and straight and everything's the same depth, because if you need to, go ahead and run them again. You notice on one time it came away from the fence and I ran it again just to clean it up. So get those one groove on the edge of each of those boards. Next it says you're going to mark an X on the best face of your top panel. So look at both faces of your panel. Maybe I like that face better. I'm going to put an X on that. And this one, it says use router number 2, so the same one. to route a groove all the way around your top panel and have the X facing up. So again, it's bold. Please look at your paper to make sure you don't get confused which part's facing up and down. We're going to run this all the way around. We want to start with the end grain. We're going to go all the way around with my X facing up this time. Also, keep it tight down so it doesn't lift up on you when you run this through. I would also look and see where the grooves match up all the way around and just make sure that everything's straight. If for some reason it's not, run it again, okay? So just get them all straight. All right, next, after you've routed those grooves, it says test to see if your top panel and top frame grooves fit together. You should have all your X's at this point facing up. So when these fit on here, this X is up, this X is up, they should slide in together and fit into that groove all the way. So on my other board over here, it's going to fit in there. And if you notice, your middle panel is the part that's above, and these ones fit into the groove underneath. Those two fit. I want to make sure my longer boards fit as well. So let's just make sure these fit. And again, all your X's should be facing up because that's what people are going to see. And the grooves should fit together. If they don't fit, if they're too tight, then you may have to run your groove again to make sure they're going to fit. And those look pretty good. You're not going to be able to fit all four at the same time because we've got to cut the miters. Next on the back side it says use router number 4. So we're going to come over to the other router over here, number 4, to route a 45-degree chamfer all the way around your top panel. Now it says be sure to have the X down when doing this. And if it has a carving on it, have your carving face down. So we're going to come over to router 4, the one with the 45-degree chamfer, and we're going to do a design all the way around our panel. We've done a groove, now we're also going to do a 45-degree angle. Also very important, like I said before, your X now is facing down. And we're going to go all the way around. I would recommend have a push stick with a block of wood follow behind. If you don't, usually what happens is that's routing, the very last part will just tear off. So try to have a block of wood right behind it. I'm going to go X down, and we're going to go all the way around all 4 sides. Should have a nice 45-degree angle that meets up with our groove. If any of these corners do tear out completely and bust out, you know, we can always sand some things and refix it later. But try if you can to use that block of wood so it doesn't tear out anything. All right, come back over to the benchtop area. Number 12, it says use the miter saw to cut your top frame front back and top frame sides to fit all the way around your top panel, allowing the grooves to fit together. Be exact on fitting this together and cut your angles at 45 degrees. And there's a picture there on the paper that shows you what we're talking about. You've done miters before. We did them on our moldings, on the base moldings of our cabinet. You're going to have to do the same thing here, framing this around. But these ones are a little bit more tricky than your base moldings, because it has that groove that it fits together into. So just cutting 45-degree angles and hoping they fit together doesn't really work. So an easy way to do this, like I said before, is cut one angle and then we'll mark the other angle. I'll show you an easy way to do that. So we know that the angle needs to go this way here. So I'm just going to mark the direction that I want to cut this. This one over here is going to be cut that angle. And I'm not marking where I'm cutting, I'm just saying turn the blade that way on that. And I would do that on all your boards. Just quickly just mark the direction that you want to cut those angles. These ones here, this angle is going to have to be cut somewhere that direction. This one's going to have to be cut that direction. And then these ones as well. Not marking where I'm cutting, just marking the angle, the direction that I need to turn the blade on that. And then just cut one angle on each of them. Don't cut the second angle yet, just cut one. You want to go 45 degrees, so I'm going to just cut one angle here. Okay, and after you cut one angle, when you match this up and you fit this together, you'll notice it's kind of difficult to see where you're cutting all these angles. This right here, as this comes down to a point, right on that point is where you want that to line up with your angle there. So you don't want this to be way farther past or way less, but try to get that point to be right on where it matches up with your angle. Now when you cut this second one here, you're not marking it here, you're marking it where the point comes down. So where this angle comes down right to a point, you put a little mark. Okay? Then that'll tell us where we're cutting our second one. And I would recommend, to make this cut easier, use what's called a speed square. It's like looks like a triangle, but it's called a speed square because you can quickly mark angles on it. And one of the angles is a 45, and you can just line this up on your board, and you can go off of your mark and draw that 45-degree angle where you want to have this cut. And that way you have a line to go off of, it's a little bit easier. So now I can go ahead and cut that second angle then. And if at all possible, try to leave some of your line when you're cutting. And now that one should be able to match up. And you can see that our points are right on where our angles are at. Now this is easier said than done. So I would recommend cut it big, and then we can always cut more off. So I'm going to do the same thing on all these others. Cut one angle, match it up, mark where the point comes down, and cut their second angle. We'll go ahead and finish this up real quick. Alright, I'm just going to cut one angle on all these, if it fits together. But again, you want to try to make sure these are lined up right on your little corner. Right where they match together on the corner, and then we're going to mark our back side here. If I can get it. There we go. Again, marking my right where the point is coming down, I'm going to mark that. And then I'm going to take my speed square and continue that line up. And that'll be where we're cutting. Now you'll notice this step is kind of tricky, because when you start to cut these, things may be not perfect when you start to match them together. And if possible, leave them a little bit big so we can make some adjustments if needed. So those two come together pretty well, and now over here comes together. And we're just going to kind of match this process around. I'm just going to come around to this one now. Match it up. And then we're going to mark our angle. Use our speed square to finish that up. Okay. We've got one more here, and then I'll show you an easy way to glue this together. All right, last one. Let's take this down. Mark a little angle right at the point, and then mark it with our speed square. Thank you, Shannon. So again, once we get them all put together, have the teacher check to make sure everything fits, and then we can glue it. Now when you glue this is kind of the hardest part. So make sure you're watching closely on this as I glue it, because once you get them all cut and framed, we want to glue this together. Don't just slap glue on and throw some clamps on. We want to try to get this thing to match up perfect. So after I've checked it off, make sure it looks good. It says glue and clamp it together, and make sure everything fits tight with no gaps. You'll notice underneath here that the middle part sits higher than the rest. So don't put glue on the whole edge of your boards here. I'm not going to put glue on my whole entire edge. I'm only going to put glue in my groove. So just put a little bit of glue in the groove only. And if you try, if possible, try not to get any on that edge. If you do get some on the edge, just kind of wipe some of it off. But we're just putting a little bit of glue in the groove. It doesn't need much. And we also want to put glue on the miters. Don't forget to put glue on your miters. Spread that around so it covers the whole end of that miter, because that we want glued. But again, don't put any glue on the edge of the board, just inside the groove. So that one will go there. Let's quickly get these ones as well. And I like to shift things around, make sure everything's lined up right where it should go before I clamp this up. Okay, so we got it fit. So again, we could just clamp it with some clamps, but it's kind of tricky. An easier way is to use our little belt clamp here. I've got a couple of these. You can just take a little strap clamp, belt clamp here, and place it all the way around. And then we'll just pull this tight. I'm actually going to flip this over. Take your strap clamp, fit it all the way around. I've got a couple strap clamps. Pull it nice and tight. And then we're going to crank this down. I've taped on the wrench so you don't lose it right to the strap itself. And you're just going to go and just crank this, and it'll just put pressure in all the corners all at the same time. And tighten this up really tight. You want basically all these miters to come together really well. If any of them lift up at all, flatten them out, make sure they're nice and straight. Everything's sitting flat. If you need to pull it to an edge of a bench, it might be easier to crank this down. You could just use clamps, like I said, just get some bar clamps and clamp it, but this might be easier for you if you use this little strap clamp here. And really, you know, crank it pretty tight. You want that to be held super tight, nice. Wipe up any wet glue when you're done and you should be good. Biggest thing on this one, the hardest part, is getting those miters cut right where you want it. So do your best you can. Don't cut them too small. Cut them a little bit big at first, we can always cut them down. Okay? Thank you guys. Go ahead.